All right, welcome back to the Great Adventure. I'm Evan Smith again. This is Andrew Pudawa, of course, as always, and we're trekking along, having covered 2 full sessions, headed into the third for next week, but kind of summarize what we've done so far. It'll be an important word in our journey. First, we like to go over our Flat Andrew promotion, our little fun activity for the kids during summer. We've got one for you today from some folks
Okay.
that sent this in, one of their excursions,
Oh my.
looking at some.
Looks like a curriculum fair, book
looks like
sale.
an
or something,
excellent
doesn't it?
curriculum. They're making some very good choices there
Yeah.
too. Yes, we didn't get names, but we've got a curriculum sale in Chattanooga.
Oh, in
Tennessee.
Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Yeah,
Well, there's the Flat Andrew made it to Tennessee,
that's right.
where I will not have been at all
That's right.
this year.
Not this year.
Yeah.
Not yet, anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sending that in. IEW.com/flatandrew to join in with all of the fun. We're saying hello to Lindsay and Jennifer. Good afternoon from South Carolina. Good afternoon to you as well. It's good to see you here again. We have finished session 2. We've got a keyword outline that came to fruition in
Right.
a full paragraph and all of the dress-ups.
So people would have written the book lice with
That's
the
right.
video,
That's right.
and then they had to do the infrasound and elephants.
That's right.
And there's good news and bad news on this.
What's that?
The good news is there's 3 check marks.
Mm-hmm.
The bad news is this is the last of the easy assignments.
That's right. That's right. Right. It'll be building on
They
top.
get a little more challenging from here out, but that's good.
It is.
That's
That's the exercise. That's how you build a skill set. So yeah, you've got your rough draft that you'd place behind your final draft with the checklist on top. And we'll talk about scanning all of that in and getting that over to us if you'd like to become accredited after we work through the entirety of the summer here. Okay, so we've got a few questions that came in by email, and I'm sure a few that will
Okay.
come. Yeah, mainly dealing with just kind of getting the feel for keyword outlines, rough drafts, all of that. You kind of go over this actually in the session 3 videos that they'll be able to watch this week. But my handwritten rough drafts are a mess with changes and revisions. So
good.
it's,
We love that.
Yeah,
That's
so-
what we like to see. a
but
big
not
mess.
real legible.
Yeah.
But once I type it, my type piece wouldn't show my mess. It would show a corrected piece of work. So if legibility is the key, what is the point of turning in a rough draft, which is messy, handwritten, legible only to the writer, as a piece of work for the teacher to see?
Well, it depends on who is going to be the editor,
Sure.
right?
Yes.
So, I mean, we could at some point talk a little more about that idea of having an editor.
It's coming up.
If, in this case, you are your own editor, we assume, because you're teachers, adults. So it doesn't really matter. In terms of if you're a teacher in a school, then what I would prefer is that the student find an editor, have them read it, they copy over the final, and then attach both.
Mhm.
Then I can see what the editor's marks were. So it gives me, as the teacher, a little bit of sense as to, what were some of the things that needed editing. Kids don't always do that. Sometimes they think they are their own editor.
Right.
But according to the best way to do it, kids write, make a mess, editor makes a worse mess, copy over, type up, I get to see both.
Right.
And
Right.
and the helpful thing is if their editor uses a different color of pen.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, some kids will type the first draft because that's just what they want to do, or they're older, they're going to argue out of handwriting it. And in that case, then the editor's marks should be visible on the typed
Right.
draft.
Right.
And then the final, and I can still compare.
Right. Right. Comparing
Yeah.
them. But a lot of it is to see that the process was accomplished. They went through the steps. They thought through it all. And
Exactly.
they built something.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the
Yeah.
exercise of it all. This is Stephanie Abney, by the way, a teacher that had a number of good questions for us. Also asked where we can find the course completion packet. It's essentially all of your checklists, everything you find in your seminar workbook. You have it all right here. But with a premium membership, we offer everything just a compilation of the parts you need to print out so you can keep your book nice.
Is
keep
that
your own notes.
is that a link?
That's right, iew.com/premium. You can look up how that works or contact our customer service department for other ways you can get access to that. We'll help you along. But you have everything you need in your seminar workbook, just so that's clear. She asked another good question here. I noticed in the demonstration lessons, specifically level A and B also, that you didn't stick to the Roman numeral with indented numbers. Instead, just listed the counting numbers down the left-hand margin of the page. What is the reason for this?
No reason. The reason is those were recorded kind of at separate times, and we weren't thinking ahead that well.
Okay.
And if you look at the new SSS videos, then I think pretty much I always use the Roman numeral, even if it's the first lesson.
Sure.
So ideally, we would go back in time and redo those demo classes. What I have found is that kids don't really care. You throw it on the board the way you want it, they copy it, you do it. And once you're past unit 2, you're always going to be using Roman numerals.
Right.
So it was just that first lesson, and that's the way I originally did it, especially with little kids. But it is different than what I say and what I do in the teacher course.
Sure.
So very observant there. I would say if you're going to show that to kids, no problem. Just tell them, after this, we're going to put a Roman numeral first.
Yeah.
And then if you're teaching it or you're teaching some other lesson, just go with the Roman numeral and just keep it consistent. But kids are a lot easier. They're less likely to notice a difference and then wonder about it.
Sure.
Because for them, things are kind of always changing.
Right. That kind of jumps ahead to a question that it keeps coming up as I rewatch some of these videos, and people I talk to all the time in school, every single setting for schooling as possible. How legalistic do we really need to be with all of this?
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Well, and that's actually a question everyone has to answer for themselves, don't they?
Okay.
I mean, I tend to be trying to be consistent, but not legalistic.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my guideline.
Consistency.
And if I do something differently, and a student says, "Why did you do that?" then I will either say, "Because I screwed up the first time," or "Because there's different ways to do this."
Sure.
So the things I tend to be legalistic are, did you get all the dress ups in the paragraph?
Right.
That's the thing that I don't waver on.
Sure.
So when I hear of teachers saying, well, there's 4 dress ups on the checklist, but I just let the kids do whichever 2 they want or something. No,
sure.
That's completely not our system.
Not what this is.
But in terms of the way in which I teach it on the board, I wish I could be more consistent.
Yeah.
But I've misspelled words on video too.
Sure.
The big advantage is you can redo it.
That's a helpful thing. That kind of goes with this. Does everything need to be double spaced? It's just helpful to be double spaced. And then
it's such a good habit.
Yeah.
It is such a good habit for the students to have. So I do tend to be strict on that, although not to the point of saying, oops, you've got to start all over. Instead, what I would do is say, why don't you start skipping from here on?
Yeah.
And then I'll sometimes put a little dot or an X on either other line to help them, every other line to help them remember.
Sure. That's good. Thanks for all of your questions there, Stephanie. And Cece Kobar actually had some similar questions, but her final question was, do we grade our own final drafts with the checklist with the points? Or should someone else we partner with be grading our final drafts and marking the checklist? So maybe we'll take the word grading out of there.
Yeah, I think for adults, it doesn't really matter, because when you send this in,
mm-hmm.
it's going to be 100%,
right.
or you're going to kick it back.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, you could do points, but I don't think there's any points on the. Is there points on there?
Yeah, we start adding them in about unit 3.
Yeah,
all there. So
and doing points is always optional.
Right.
The advantage of points is if you need to give a grade, the points help you do that. The disadvantage of points is that kids can get the idea that, oh, if I just don't do something, I'll still have
I can
enough
afford
to get
it. I can
I'll still
yeah.
have enough to get an A.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not what I want.
Right,
I want 100% because, we are excellence in writing. And part of that, kind of do what you check and check what you do
Mhm.
and do 100% is one of the intangible benefits from working with structure and style that hopefully carries over into all areas
Right,
of study and even life.
right.
I mean, we don't want anyone working in our office that says, yeah, 92%, that's good enough. It's not.
Right,
Yeah.
right. We're shooting for greater. All right. Well, that leads also into the conversation about hiring an editor, which could also be helpful for an adult doing this at the time, someone who's done this before, someone a little more seasoned with it to kind of look over just to make sure.
Sure.
We might actually encourage that if we see some things that are kind of on the line with the accreditation department, just so that you can have the full understanding and do the most good for your students as you go. Hiring an editor, though, is one of the most helpful things, like you said, in working from the rough draft into the final. A mom, perhaps, the difference between an editor and a mom is
The editor will fix up the paper and hand it back with no lecture attached.
right.
The mom kind of wants to explain why she made every mark on the page.
Right.
Nobody wants that. So, and I would refer people to the talk, The Four Deadly Errors of Teaching Writing,
Mhm.
where I really unpack that idea in much more detail.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but it might be that people meet each other here.
Mhm.
Uh, and I know Lisa Herman, who just joined in, she would be very happy to edit anyone's paper.
Sure. Sure.
I think she would.
We have a list of accredited instructors you could reach out
Yeah.
to as well that would know how to type that.
So
Jean, who works in our schools division, said, my sixth graders could type their rough drafts, but I required that they print out a copy and handwrite their revisions and edits. Then they could fix or update their typed copy. They had to hand in the rough draft with the handwritten fixes to get full credit for the composition.
perfect. That's exactly the way I would do it.
And Stephanie Abney actually had something like that, to requiring them to handwrite the keyword outline, handwrite the draft, then type the final, because she wants to see both. Make sure they go through
Sure.
the process. Like
Well, and it depends on the age of students you're
Sure.
working with,
Sure.
because a lot of schools now are becoming paperless
Yeah.
to some degree.
Yeah.
Certainly with distance learning, sending a typed, PDF or Word doc is a lot easier.
Yeah.
I still would prefer they print it out, mark on it,
Right.
scan it, and then send it.
Yeah.
So just I can see the level of involvement and engagement.
Yeah. And same with the accredited, the registered assignments, scanning that work in, so we can see you did it. It'll help to make sense of what we're reading on the final drafts too. It's not just about the final product there; it's the process versus the
Yep.
product. I just had one quick question before we move into Unit 3. What was your first impression when you tried out your first paragraph, writing all those stylistic techniques with Dr. Webster?
Good heavens.
You got up there. You got to do this work.
32 years ago.
Yeah. Did it strike you as something you might want to build something with, or just kind of wait and see at that point?
Well, it was pretty new to me. I will tell a funny story, and I don't know if I told it in the video or not, but after I went to Gerard the first year, I went back the second year, and then I went back a third year, and that's when they said, well, if you're going to keep coming back, you might as well join our team.
Right.
Well, the second year, Webster remembered me, and we had a bit of a friendship developing. And so he was particularly hard on me, but he was saying, you really need to get 100% on every single thing. So I don't know, it was one of the later units,
Sure.
6, 7, 8. I feel like it was long. And I had the checklist, and I went through and I underlined and I numbered and I highlighted and I did every single thing, and I double, triple, quadruple checked, because I said, I am going to get a 100% on this.
Right.
And I got it back, 99%.
Oh man.
Well, what was missing? the date.
Ah,
The checklist said
it's
date on the
checklist.
paper, and I didn't do it. And Webster took great happiness, I suppose, satisfaction
Yeah, yeah.
in being able to not give me the 100% I
Right.
had been striving
Right,
for.
right.
I'm not quite that hard-nosed with my kids, I don't think, but anyway,
Date is on the checklist.
learn my lesson.
That's right.
Check what you
That's
do,
right.
do what you check. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. So moving in next week, what you'll watch this week is session 3, which is unit 3, the story sequence chart.
Right.
The more intriguing and one of the more challenging steps, perhaps the most challenging step in this process.
I think so, because the way in which we get the keyword outline is so different.
Right.
And so I would say from unit 2, where we're reading, choosing keywords from each sentence in the short source text, now it's a completely different idea. Put the story into the brain, then you pull the story out using the story sequence chart, and the keywords are not coming from the page.
Right.
They may exist on the page, but they're coming from the brain.
Right.
So you might get some keywords that went from the paper into the brain and the brain onto the page, but you also might say the story went into the brain, the story is coming out into the keyword outline, and some of the words you used to do that are nowhere in the original.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
But it is a very different one, and I would say historically, that is where we have probably people most likely to kind of get stuck. So that's why I think it's so nice when we do this, they can really just take the time, wrestle with it, write it all the way through. The Bat and the Nightingale story, ideally, you can do that with someone else.
Okay.
So, in the live seminar, what I do is I put everyone in groups of 2 or 3. Always 2 or 3, never more than 3, because if you have more than 3, it's a committee and nothing gets done. But you work with a partner or 2, and you kind of facilitate the conversation. You ask the questions on the story sequence chart, and then you think of an answer, and then you essentially are making a keyword outline from whatever answer you had to the question. Sure. Some people take to this a little easier than others, which is why it's nice to do it with someone, because if it's kind of just new and you're not comfortable or you're not thinking easily, someone else might be, and then you kind of learn from that. And then what I would do is I would kind of walk around the room, and if there's a group of 2 or 3 that kind of has only a couple lines filled in and everybody else is over halfway done and they're kind of stuck, or they're standing around debating about what keywords to use, or having an argument, or thinking they all have to agree and put down the exact same keywords, I'll try and intercede and loosen things up a little bit.
Yes.
So if you're doing it with a partner, and I do this with kids too, you do not have to put exactly the same thing as the other person or people in your group. So you ask a question, someone has an answer. Okay, how does that answer go into keywords? And maybe you have a slightly different answer. So I would say that this is the harder one. The other thing people will discover is that with the fox and the grapes, no, I'm sorry, the fox and the crow is the story, right? It's really clear what the conflict or problem is. The fox wants the cheese. So there's that want or need. Right. In the Bat and the Nightingale, it is a little bit more subtle. So one good way to approach that is to say, okay, who in this story wants or needs something to change, right? And that becomes really your kind of, I guess, protagonist would be the word. I don't necessarily use it much, but who wants something to be different than the way it is? That can be the want or need.
Sure.
So yeah, the Bat and the Nightingale exist, and the bat's flying around eating mosquitoes, and the nightingale is very happily dissing the bat. What does the nightingale want or need? Or what does the bat want or need? Sure. And then you say, oh, it's kind of more on the bat side. The bat wants or needs to get the nightingale to stop pestering them.
Right.
At least I would if I
Right.
was the bat.
Right.
So you can ask that question to help you get to the question of what do they want or need,
Yeah.
which will be kind of the start of the conflict problem, second paragraph section of the story.
Right, right. And I think that's the biggest key here is that we're really, really starting to practice asking good questions.
Yes.
Pretty basic questions to start, but that's how you get to.
Yeah.
the
And then,
deeper
of course,
questions.
5, 7,
Yeah.
that's where the questions get
Right.
more important and
Right.
a little less concrete. I wouldn't say harder, but a little less concrete in
Sure.
terms of the model.
Yeah.
The other thing I like to remind people, I'm sure I say this in the seminars, don't worry too much about exactly which answer to which question goes where.
Okay.
Particularly
that's
at the end of the second and beginning of the third paragraph, people say, well, should this go there or there? Truth is, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? It could go there or there. It all come out in the wash.
Right.
As long as you've got everything you need. So we're not legalistic about what's exactly in each of the 3 paragraphs. And it's a narrative, so it's going through time. So there's going to be some flexibility and flow.
Right. Right. That's a very good point to remember. So the checklist is if there's a legalistic part, which we won't use that word, a consistent part, thorough part. The
Yeah.
checklist is the only part. The rest of it, stick with the model.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
yeah.
And like I said, the model has a little bit of flexibility.
Okay.
And I think I do make some comments about the bat and the nightingale on the video after everyone has made the outline.
Right.
The interesting thing most people experience when they do this unit 3 is they come to the awareness that for most of them and for almost all kids, writing the 3 paragraphs after the outline is made is actually easier. Creating the outline, it's a higher order of thinking. It's more analytical, whereas writing the keywords into sentences is more mechanical.
Right.
And so understanding that, your students will probably need a little more help with the creation of the outline, and it's totally fine to do it all together. So in the TWSS, it's like, okay, here's the fox and the crow. We did the whole thing together. All right, that's pretty easy. Okay, now you're bat and nightingale. You're all on your own. That's a big jump that I wouldn't do probably with a group of students. Instead, I'd do one of them all together. And then the next one, I would probably do the first part together and then say, okay, if you think you got the hang of it, go ahead and try this on your own. If not, stick with the group here and we'll keep going.
Yeah.
So that it would be over the month worth of assignments, which could be 3 or 4 unit 3 assignments, before I would have much of an expectation that students would be able to create the outline completely independently.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, a lot of teachers, a lot of homeschool parents, we have this idea that somehow if the student doesn't do it all by themselves, they're not learning.
Right.
Whereas the opposite could be true. If they're trying to do it all by themselves and don't have success, that's when they're not learning. So that's when you would back up and say, okay, well, let's just do it together again.
Right.
And if you have, special needs kids or young kids or sometimes ESL kids or whatever, you may do all the unit 3 assignments together with the class. And that's okay.
Yeah.
There's no rule that says you have to get to 100% independent by the end of the unit.
Right.
Because of course, our system is you're going to come back the next year and everything's going to be smoother and easier for everyone. And if you're doing this 3, 4, 5 years, you don't have to worry about that first time through.
Yeah.
Knowing there's going to be plenty of runway for independence.
Right. And you talk about this for a while in the session 3, so you'll get this. This is great stuff to be on the front of your mind as you hear this again, but modeling ultimately leading toward greater independence. Let's get a question real quick. Heather Smith said, I am working through the completion packet, but I do not have an editor. It is just me by myself. I am making my own edits on my rough drafts, typing a final draft, and setting that aside to send in for accreditation. Will this process suffice, or do I need to have someone else editing my work? You do not need to have someone.
Yeah, no, we trust you to be your own editor.
Right.
Oh, adults.
Right.
You.
And we'll point you back to where you need to look in the seminar if anything is not clear. So that's fine. And then Carla says, does the student actually make the check mark on the checklist so that when they turn in their final work, the checklist is already checked? Or is the checklist for the teacher to check off as grading?
Well, the way I have set up the checklist is there's a checkbox on the left side, and that's for the student to make the check. And on the right side is either the points or just a blank.
Mm-hmm.
And then the teacher can check or assign the points.
Sure.
So it kind of goes that way. At least I think that's how most of the theme-based lesson book checklists, and I know the SSS checklists are all set up that way. So,
but ultimately, the checklist is for the student to make sure
yeah,
to include everything in there.
And you know, sometimes you get a student's a little cocky, and they'll just be like, "Yeah, I did everything," and they'll just check it all off without double checking what they checked.
Right.
And that's when I got to kick it back and say,
Right.
"You checked this off, but you didn't do it. So
that's right.
Why?"
Right, right. Indicators. We'll talk about that one more time in a moment. There's so many great points on Unit 3 when you talk about all of the different ways you can use it. For me, conversational with books that we were reading at home was one of the first things that I took to and said, wow, this is something really great. I particularly enjoyed the joke that you're able to build through the story sequence chart. Do you remember the joke?
Oh,
we won't say it because we won't watch it. But
about the frog that wants to
needs
get alone and go on vacation.
So enjoy that.
I haven't heard that. I haven't told that joke for a while.
You got to practice. That's a long one, but you walk right through the chart. So you got some good stuff to look forward here. Aesop's fables are great sources to work from. Of course, we've got all our curriculum ready to go for you.
Right.
But you talk about a lot of different sources.
Fables, myths, fairy tales, legends, parables. Right. They're all really good.
Timeless.
Monique, I see, has this question. When doing it the following years, are you using different levels of structure and style for students? Yes. And when you say level, what I hear and what I mean when I say level is reading level. And we have our things divided into upper elementary, middle, and high school. Well, lower elementary, upper elementary, middle, and high school. And so, yes, you would be using different stories, different articles, different source texts, different subjects for research each year. What is the same is you're going through all the units, and you are continuing to practice the stylistic techniques and adding them in a lot faster than, say, the year before.
Yeah, which he maps out again in these videos. You'll appreciate this because it gives you a couple different options, so you know that you're okay.
Yeah,
as long as you're pushing through, you're going to be all right. We can talk briefly about the sentence openers, which you'll get into after we work through Unit 3, but we'll talk more next week because these actually won't be on the practicum assignments for you this time. We want you to just try Unit 3, but we go ahead and tack this on in advance of what we'll be doing next week. This was the scariest thing to me, I think, that I encountered as I first got started.
Oh, really?
It just seemed intimidating. There's a lot of stuff, the grammar, prepositions. Oh no.
It's funny. I've met people who are, teaching in schools.
Yeah.
And will say to me, I think I learned more grammar.
Yeah.
In this 2 days than I learned.
Yeah.
Up to this point, even though I'm
use grammar
application.
Yeah, that's right. So it wasn't until sitting in with the structure and style for students to see it really in action. This is the best thing ever. So it's my favorite now because variety.
Yeah,
and that's how we make things interesting and appealing to our readers. So we'll get into a little more of that, but you'll get to see that in the last half or last section of the video this week. Okay, so our practicum assignments this week. Let's make sure we don't have any other questions here real quick. Yeah, we're good. Our practicum assignments this week, we have the Fox and Crow, which you'll write together.
Right.
Just do the outline.
That's just on the board group. All you have to do is copy down what we write.
And hang on to it because it will come into play later. We'll save you a little work as time goes on.
Right.
The Bat and the Nightingale then is what you'll be working on.
Right.
If you have a partner.
It looks very similar.
That's
it's just a different story, but the story sequence chart and the method of getting the keywords is all the same.
That's right. And then your checklist with just the dress-ups. So let's talk about common struggles for a moment with the practicum assignments. And I think we're still looking at just getting a feel for indicators at this point.
Right.
And I think it's always worth repeating how helpful the indicators, not just for the student, one of each for what you have in your paragraph.
Right. And at this point, all the teachers doing it are doing all 6 dress ups
Right.
in all 3 paragraphs.
Right.
And with kids, you would not necessarily be at all 6 dress ups in Unit 3.
Right.
And that's kind of the thing that, you know how you say, don't do what I say, don't do what I do, do what I say.
Don't do
So
what I do.
I teach the stylistic techniques too fast
Right.
to the adults.
Right.
So you want to, as you're doing it, remember, you don't want to do this to your students.
Right.
So they may just be on 3 dress ups.
Right.
But the idea is you'd have all the dress ups that you have learned in each of the 3 paragraphs.
Right.
And then the indicator is the underline.
Of one, just the word.
And a couple reminders on indicators. Number 1, as you said, just the word. Don't underline a whole clause. Did we mention the reason for that last time?
Why don't you go ahead?
Well, because if you had a when, while, where, since, as, if, although adverb clause and you underline the whole thing, well, what if your strong verb was inside that clause?
Right.
Then you'd have to have some goofy thing like a double underline and make it harder to figure out. So just underline the word where or when or while, etc. And then if there is a strong verb inside that clause, you would underline that strong verb. And then it's perfectly clear. Because what I, the teacher, want to be able to do is just look, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you got them all. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you got them all. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Something's missing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Then I can decide, do I want to be merciful? Right. Maybe they're missing a strong verb. Well, I could go find the strong verb and underline it and then make a little unhappy face on the checkmark checklist saying, I had to underline this for you, or try to embarrass them into being more careful next time. Right. Or if I don't want to be merciful, I just kick it back and say, only 3 underlines.
Yeah. Right.
And it's funny because the stricter you are in the beginning, the easier your life is in the end.
Right.
It's like anything. You let the kids get away with not doing something.
Right.
Then next time. So that's the first one is only the single word for the underline.
Right. So we basically are expanding what we did last week, but you're following the model of the Unit 3 story sequence chart. And start coming.
Yeah, and Heather Smith is asking on the rough draft only, also on the final. Definitely on the final. The only case where you wouldn't is if you took your final, you printed out another version and submitted it to some other thing, like a story contest or a different teacher or, whatever. But I want to see real clearly on the final those underlines.
That's right. The indicators, that's part of the system. That's just what we do. So yeah, that actually is a very good point to remember as well for your practicum assignments. Anyone who looks at this later on, your indicators are a part of your final draft when you're writing in the structure and style system. So
yeah,
very good stuff. Okay, well, we've got a couple winners.
Oh, winners.
Gift certificate again.
Oh, gosh, fantastic.
Get a drum roll.
We got 2 winners.
2 winners. And $50 gift certificates.
$50. Well, that could solve their problem of
That's right. We've got a couple.
To buy some curriculum.
Yeah, we've got some good curriculum questions. Actually, call our customer service team, and we'll have an in-depth discussion with you, Destiny.
Which you would want to use with your. Yeah, it'd be best for us to, know a little more about your 3rd and 4th grade kids. Yeah. What's their ease and facility with reading level? What's their ease of writing? Their level of,
That's right. And we've practiced asking a lot of questions, so we'll have the right ones for you.
Okay, well, our first winner is Patricia Emick.
Okay.
Patricia Emick, classroom teacher from Kentucky. So super. Very happy that you won that, Patricia.
Yeah, thanks for joining in.
And then we also have, from our very own state of Oklahoma. I hope that doesn't look suspicious to anyone. Ashlyn Steedman. Who works in a hybrid school here in Oklahoma, which makes me wonder which hybrid school we might know. Might be up the road.
Yep.
So we've got Patricia Emick, Ashlyn Steedman, and they need to contact.
No, we'll contact them.
We'll contact them.
We got your email when you signed up. So
Super.
everybody keep doing that. The events page is where we'll discuss. You can have discussions about all of this, but IEW.com/great-adventure will get you everywhere you need to go. You can sign up. Well, once you're signed up, you're in the drawing, so you got a chance.
Now I was saying, where do we submit the assignment?
Yes.
And they're supposed to keep everything.
Yes.
Until the end.
Right.
And then submit it all at once.
That's right. That's right. So when we wrap this up, actually the final week, we're going to have a Zoom call, so you actually can have a little bit more interaction with us.
Good.
We'll talk about all of the accreditation, all the final steps, everything you need to do if you'd like to take that step. We'll make sure it's all clear. But yeah, just keep building it up. Follow the checklists. Do what you check what you do. Put the date on there. And we will have your marching orders are to watch Unit 3, the third session. Just watch it all the way through. Your practicum will be on Unit 3. Get a little taste of the sentence openers, which will come next week. And I think Julie will be here with me next week.
I will be not here. That's right.
Yeah,
I'll
so
be
we'll have...
actually on an airplane at this very time next week.
All right. Well, that's safe travels. We'll have Julie.
Yeah. And I think everybody does need a joke for their kid. This is a real kid joke.
Okay.
It's not a frog in the bank that requires a lot of,
but it's
knowledge. So I have a friend who recently moved into an igloo.
All right.
Yeah. So I gave him a housewarming present, and now he's homeless.
That was a good setup. All right, kids, practice that one. Send us a video. Okay, that covers everything. Unit 3. It's a big one. It's an exciting one. Let us know if you have any other questions. Customer service is here for you. And I'll be here next week. Julie Walker will be with me. Andrew will be back in 2 weeks, I believe.
I believe so.
All right.
Super.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you very much. Adios.
Bye-bye.